I love how in life we have all of these sayings and we put it together, all these metaphors and similes and stories. I was thinking about how we talk about like light and dark, or we use the car to describe situations like going fast and not reinventing the wheels and all the things. And one of the most simplest ones that come up for me is like this idea of like dark and light. And it's not necessarily good or bad, but dark and light are things that we experience. If I go into my room at night, turn off the lights, it's dark, and I'm able to sleep. So that darkness is playing its role and its purpose, making it easier for me to sleep. And when it's time to wake up and I'm in a new energy or ready to take on a day, I have the light to support me in doing so. And so with all this, I'm thinking about when you are in a dark place and it's not because you want to go to sleep or because you're laying down to rest or because you're in a dark room for photography, but you're in a dark place, maybe in your mind, in life, it feels dark and dim. And how oftentimes we talk about light, like don't dim your light, find the light. Who is the light? What is the way? And we all probably have different lanes of like what light is to us. But when you're in that dark place, there's a question that I think is important to remember. And that is if you can turn on the light. Like while you're in a dark place, can you turn on the light? And turn on the light might not mean that you don't still feel that darkness, but it's like one assignment or one activity that makes that dark place shift. There are things that you need to do, like one thing at a time, in order for you to start shifting from a dark place. And it's, where can I turn on the light? It's not a request or a command to stop feeling that darkness or to say that the darkness doesn't exist, but it's creating an environment or saying that there is light that can exist. Like I can turn on the light. If it's possible for me to turn on the light, I can turn on the light before I get to the point where I cannot turn on the light. Like since we're talking about light and darkness, think about how when someone gets their electricity shut off, there were no deposits, there probably was no grace, or something happened. There was no depositing in order to keep those lights on. No action was taken. And so it gets turned off. And so then in that situation, if you are in a dark space that requires electricity, like you have to turn on the light switch, then no, you cannot turn on the light. But what's so beautiful about this in itself is, years ago, when I was first coming out of college and learning how to be an adult, I was young and figuring out life. I ended up in a dark space, and I was in this dark space with someone, and the lights got turned off, and I had no idea why the lights got turned off, but the lights got turned off. And it was dark at night. It was dark. It was very dark. If you wanted to get up at night, you just literally had to stay there and you had to sleep until the light came in the morning. But what's so beautiful is that even though those lights were, by the system design, taken away, the light of the day came through those windows. And whatever you could do with that light during that time in that day, even though it got turned off, you were able to still activate. You still had action that you could apply when those lights got turned on. And the reason why I bring this up is because we have both options. Like, light still can come. Like, that activity of turning, like, we can turn on the light switch and find our way, like, and be able to see things clearly. Just like, what can I do in my day to turn on a light switch so I can see this a little bit clearly? Because right now I'm in a dark space where I'm not supposed to be in a dark space. So if I turn on something that brings me a little light, maybe it'll help me see clearly while I'm in this dark space. Admitting that it still feels dark, it still feels uncomfortable, but while I'm in this dark space, what's that one thing that I can do? I can turn on a light switch. And maybe sometimes you don't want that light switch to come on because of the way that light switch is not even natural light, right? It's artificial light, so even that light might be a little bit harsh and you might not turn on a light switch that way. So where can I turn on that light? Do I just sit and wait until the natural light comes and then I do something with that? And so here we go. In a dark space, whether it's going to be that light that comes consistently, there has not been a day when light has not come in the morning time. And all I'm required to do is to activate while that light is on, to help me when it feels dark and I'm in the light. I'm literally in light, but it feels dark. Imagine if that's the situation that you're hearing, is that I feel the darkness. I don't want to be here. I don't like these things. I don't feel good about this. I am that. Right? These are things that we're saying to ourselves from time to time in the dark. If you clicked on this video, maybe sometimes you do feel like that in the dark. And so when someone says, just think positive or think on the good, that has been distorted to some to be what's called toxic positivity. And I did a video about this a long time ago. I don't like how those words are formed together. What I truly think that is when people are trying their best to think on the good, to store some positive thoughts, is not a toxic trait. It's trying. Like, shifting that toxic, making everything toxic, and like trying. If someone is trying to be positive, they're trying to deposit it. The only thing toxic is if they have bad intentions behind it. If they're doing it without pure intentions, if they have something behind them. But if someone is trying to be positive, what feels toxic is that you aren't able to clearly see that thinking on the good is way better than the default of thinking on what's worse. It's way better. It always eventually has a better payout. The dividends on it, there's always a better payout if you deposit a little bit of that versus continuing to deposit negativity. And whatever, how we play with words, and words can mean different things, and I know we form words to say this means that or whatever, but what do you really want when you decide that I want to... I don't even know where that noise in the background came from. That noise is strong right now. I'm gonna talk a little louder. This is the last thing I'll say. When you think about being in a dark space and turning on that light, it can be very simple actions, and you will be able to determine that. Like, for me, what is it, the things that I like to do? Like, remembering those things, going out and a walk, and then being blessed to be able to have great weather, being able to read and to write, to talk to people that have great conversation, to form great conversation, to eat a cantaloupe or melons. recognizing whatever turns the light on so that you can see things clearly will help shift whatever seemingly is dark, shift you from places where you can start to see clearly. Because when you're in dark spaces, the thoughts that come through, they aren't always clear, and they are not the thoughts that will help you, for lack of better words. But most of this is really simple. When I think about this, there's a scripture that tells you to take thoughts into captive. And I literally think through that thought, like, okay, how do you really take a thought into captive? There are words and sayings that people say to inspire and motivate people. Like, how do you actually do that? Like, what does that mean to take it captive? And another thing that turns on a light for me, or things that I like, are court shows. I grew up being in the background watching court shows. I love them. I like the idea of the criminal investigation. A lot of people like those in this time, and for reasons that we can all investigate. But it's not the fact that the crime is happening, or that this case of divorce court or Judge Joe Mathis or all those things, you get to see that conflict. But it's really, the story. Like, how did they even get there? And what questions will help us get to the truth when you weren't a participant and you are dependent on two participants with totally different perspectives? How do you get to what the truth is? And most of that is through the investigation, quality questions. There's a story in the Bible with the king, and the king has two women in front of him, and he's trying to determine whether or not one woman is lying about this child or the other. And there was a series of questions. That's what I appreciate about this re-engagement with the Bible, is that everything is about questions. Whoever said to not question, there is a tone behind that. It's not question with this intent to find someone out. It's really question for truth, because wherever you land, if your questions are formed to find truth instead of skewed to like what you want it to be, or skewed to what you think it should be, it's just to find truth. That's what we do. We become our own cases. When we take thoughts into captive, we become our own cases, and we think, I am thinking this thought, but is it true? And who told me that? And why am I thinking it? And even if it has truth to it, what are other lanes and routes to get me to the fruit? Because where will this thought lead me? The primary question, if you ever are shifting your thoughts to figure out how do you get from a dark place and turn on a light, or to do something when light naturally exists, is what do I do next with this? Where will it lead me? Where will this thought lead me? If the thought does not lead you into clear light, and you continue and the route is darker, you have to backpedal. And then it becomes that trying and that testing of, what if I do try these thoughts that I cannot grasp right now? It's too dark for me to grasp a positive thought. It's too dark for me to think on the good because it's so dark. That is the practice. That's what you're being steered away from, is that beautiful decision making, the choice. Two choices. You're choosing life, you're choosing death. How is that happening in this moment? If I choose life, some of that doesn't even feel like life at the moment. It might feel like darkness at the moment. But when you start to deposit in that direction, whatever overdrive or negative balance you have, it needs to respond to what is true, that you deposited. No matter what, if you have negative $10 in your bank account, and it could be more for a lot of us in this economy, but if you have a negative in your bank account and then you start making decisions, sometimes it feels overwhelming. Like, why does it even matter to deposit any good when it's so dark? because the other direction is just, it does nothing. It does nothing, absolute nothing. When you go in, even if you go into the direction of that negative $10, just 5 cents, it is a change that's for better. There's nothing that you're depositing in the negative direction that is good. And if you only have 5 cents worth of getting yourself into that action of putting that thought into captivity, try it. See what happens when you, because the thing is, this is my theory, is that just that practice alone, even if like we're looking at the bank account and it's negative 10 and you really don't actually get to that negative 10 that day or that year, that action and that practice of doing it just a little bit provides more clarity. And that clarity could be, what is it that I'm doing, or what is it that I can do, or who is it that I can be exposed to? What is it that I can learn to change the situation? That is what the activity does. It allows you to have more light come through, allows you to have more clear thoughts, and then that puts you on the path closer to where you want to be. So this positive toxicity or toxic positivity, it's a thing if we want to claim it. All of these things and labels are things that we want to claim it, but we have to determine what that descriptor is and what purpose it is. So this is actually the real last thing. When I think about that purpose and descriptor of things, in this season, where the spaces I'm in, we're learning a lot about our mind. And that could be a neurodivergent mind, that could be an autistic mind, that could be ADHD, that could be a lot of different things. And people are now naming and claiming these descriptors. One lane will say, hey, don't keep naming yourself, don't put that on you. And I imagine that the premise of this is because if you keep speaking that way, if you keep going in that direction, that's what you will become. You will become someone who is X. But the neutral way of thinking about this is, what if I'm just describing my situation, giving light to my situation, naming it so I understand what it is? Because going back to this dark place, let's say some of the things that you're saying you believe are true, or even someone outside of you believe you are true. Maybe the truth is, hey, you are a liar. Okay, what are you lying about? Some things that you're lying about, you're actually lying about. And then the other thing that you're lying about is that you have to stay that liar. And then you're lying about that lie, that you have to stay that liar. Now you become a different type of liar. You're lying to yourself that you are no good, that there's nothing that you can do. Those are also lies about yourself. So when we think about these court cases and these cases and investigating our own self and our own thought, what are you lying about? Because you believe it's true in a dark space, because you don't have enough clarity to see any other perspective or see anything that's clear. Why are you there? That's what those deposits allow. Just a little bit. Practicing. It's a test. It doesn't even feel right. When you're in a dark space, it feels easier to just stay there, because what else? And I've heard these stories. I've been close to these stories, very, very close to these stories, where I see how deep and dark it can get. I've seen the cases where you keep thinking positive and you think on the good and something bad happens, and so that makes you feel like it doesn't work. But even if you're being logical and you believe that's true, if you're logical and you investigate the darkness as well, you will find out that even going in that direction won't make it any better. It won't make it any better. Even the times when you're depositing these positive thoughts, one space that clarity will land you in is you will figure out that, oh, is not as dark as I thought it was. There is another route, and now I can see it.